I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Senator John Cornyn blasted both Senators Chuck Schumer and Joe Manchin on the Senate floor Thursday. A bipartisan group of senators celebrated the passage of the CHIPS and Science Act at a Wednesday press conference. Hours later, Senator Joe Manchin announced he reached a deal with the Senate Majority Leader on the tax, energy, and health care bill. No Republicans are expected to vote for the measure, which is called the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. Cornyn accused Manchin of doing, quote, an Olympic-worthy flip-flop.
Mr. President, a few weeks ago, the fate of the CHIPS Act, our collective effort to shore up a vulnerable semiconductor supply chain, was in limbo. Republicans said we would not move forward with what was then known as USICA, the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, while Democrats were crafting a partisan, reckless, massive tax and spending bill behind closed doors. Then Senator Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, made a decision that angered most of his Democratic colleagues. He slammed the door on the climate and tax provisions in reconciliation. He said, until we see the July inflation figures, which we haven't seen yet, until we see the July Federal Reserve interest rates, then let's wait. He noted that families are struggling to buy such essentials as gasoline and groceries and added, I can't make that decision basically on taxes of any type. That was what I will call the old Joe. After we received assurances privately from some Senate Democrats, including the staff of the Senate Majority Leader, that the tax and climate provisions were off the table, we were able to move forward with USICA and the funding of this vulnerable semiconductor supply chain that is an important part of the bill that the House is voting on today. So Republicans and Democrats went to work negotiating in good faith to reach an agreement because we recognize that the vulnerability of our semiconductor supply chain was an economic and national security existential threat. Because 90% of the advanced semiconductors in the world that power everything from your cell phone to the F-35 to the Stinger or the Javelin missiles that are being used in Ukraine today, 90% of those come from overseas, and the United States makes 0% of them. That was the vulnerability and the risk that we were exposed to. So that's why we worked so hard on a bipartisan basis to pass the what used to be called Endless Frontiers, and I guess it's had about 4 or 5 different names so far, but it started in my mind with the CHIPS for America Act that Senator Warner, the senator from Virginia, and I introduced in June of 2020. So we all celebrated with a bipartisan press conference just in the LBJ room over here. But then shortly after that bipartisan announcement, we learned some astonishing news. The climate and tax provisions apparently were never off the table, despite what we had been told. Apparently, Democrats, specifically the Majority Leader and Senator Manchin, just moved those discussions out of the public eye into a secret back room. And I'm pretty much believe that other Democratic colleagues were not clued in on those negotiations. That's my impression. It was a secret deal between the Majority Leader and Senator Manchin. Well, as I said, the CHIPS Act, as part of this larger China competitiveness bill, passed around 1 o'clock. And it was just 4 hours later that Senator Manchin sent out a press release announcing that Build Back Broke was now on track. After saying repeatedly he would not support such reckless policies, he's done an Olympic-worthy flip-flop. And there's simply no denying it. Let me talk about the new Joe. It simply can't be overstated how dramatic this reversal is. Democratic senators called me and texted me yesterday after Senator Manchin's announcement. One said, "I am so shocked and upset." Another said, "I'm appalled." A member of the president's cabinet said, "I hope you know and trust that I had absolutely no idea this was going on." Just 2 weeks ago, Senator Manchin said he wouldn't support the climate policies and tax increases out of fear that it would fan the flames of inflation. Last month, as we will recall, inflation hit a new 4-decade high. Everyday expenses for food, groceries, other necessaries of life were up more than 9% from just a year ago. Our colleague from West Virginia said he told the Democratic leader it would be wrong and not prudent to move forward while inflation was at a record high. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for that sense of fiscal responsibility to fade. I don't know the details about the secret deal between Senator Manchin and Senator Schumer that resulted in this reversal, but I have to say it was ugly. Now, Senator Manchin not only supports the Build Back Broke bill, he now said it's his proposal. He, in effect, wrote it. And it includes the same policies that he previously opposed. Tax hikes on working families and small businesses, Green New Deal climate policies, socialist price controls on prescription drugs, things like subsidies for wealthy purchasers of electric vehicles. Forget the fact that somebody who can't afford an electric vehicle, who has to drive an old clunker, perhaps, or buy a used car, they're the ones subsidizing wealthy people buying electric vehicles. It's all in there. And Democrats could not have picked a worse time to push this reckless, irresponsible bill. This morning's news on the state of the economy confirms what millions of Americans have known for months, that the Biden recession is officially here. Our economy is not just stuck in the mud, it's sinking. Families and small businesses deserve better than a toxic combination of higher prices and feeble economic growth. Instead of helping the people survive this recession, our Democratic colleagues want to push them even deeper into the hole. And in 2008, Senator Schumer himself, the majority leader, said that raising taxes during a recession was a bad idea. President Obama said exactly the same thing. In 2009, President Obama, in the aftermath of the Great Recession, due to the financial crisis in 2008, President Obama said virtually the same thing that Senator Schumer said. The last thing you want to do is raise taxes in the middle of a recession. And that's exactly where we are. The following year, in 2010, Senator Manchin agreed with Senator Schumer and President Obama. He said, "I don't think during a time of recession you mess with any of the taxes or increase in taxes." That's the old Joe. That's the same senator who's now proposing to raise taxes on families in the middle of a recession. Now, here's the real joke, but I guess the joke's on all of us. They're calling it the Inflation Reduction Act. What an insult to the intelligence of the American people. Do they think anybody will be fooled? Do they think the American people are so stupid that they will believe this is an honest attempt to address inflation? There is not a chance. This proposal is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Our Democratic colleagues can try to rebrand the Build Back Broke bill that they tried to pass earlier this year all they want, but it's filled with the same rotten policies that will hurt families, small businesses, and energy producers. While the president, by the way, goes to Saudi Arabia, hat in hand, asking the leader of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to produce more oil overseas rather than encourage domestic production here in America. If this bill were to pass, it would eliminate any chance we had of escaping the recession policies that Democrats have landed us in. Families are being crushed by the worst inflation in 4 decades. For every dollar you have, it's worth 91 cents in purchasing power because of the broken policies of the Biden administration. But it's not the politicians that pay the price. We're doing just fine. It's the working families all across this country who are paying the price for Democrats' war on American energy, for example. And they're sick and tired of being told by Washington Democrats that you can tax and spend our way out of this mess. I got some bad news. If the Democratic leader can manage to keep all 50 Democrats on board, it's going to get worse. Our only hope is that a single Democratic senator will oppose this massive, irresponsible bill. And it only takes one in a 50-50 Senate. Not only will this bill have a devastating impact on the American people, it will absolutely paralyze this chamber. There's been recent discussions about, well, amidst polarization, there is possibility for bipartisan cooperation. And I've been proud to be a part of some of that bipartisan cooperation. I think we've done some important things for the American people. But the Senate functions on trust. There are only 100 of us, and the relationships and the confidence that we have that when somebody looks you in the eye and tells you something, that they're going to stick with it is important to negotiating in good faith and building consensus that's necessary to pass legislation. And that's the only way we can pass legislation. Work in a bipartisan, candid, good faith way to get things done, like our mental health and school safety bill recently. But Mr. President, that trust was eviscerated yesterday. Senators Manchin and Schumer did not draft this 725-page bill in the 4 hours between the passage of the CHIPS Act and Senator Manchin's press release. They've been working on this the entire time when they told us it was off the table. How is this chamber supposed to function if we don't have at least some modicum of trust in what our colleagues tell us? How can we negotiate in good faith, compromise where necessary, and get things done together after the majority leader and the senator from West Virginia pull a stunt like this? The American people are sometimes left to wonder whether our institutions, including this one, can work anymore. Well, I can only speak for this senator when I say this betrayal is an absolute declaration of political warfare. For years, many of our Democratic colleagues have claimed that the Senate is broken because of the filibuster. They act as though a procedural vote with a 60-vote threshold is an end of democracy as we know it. But look where we are now. The Democratic leader's crafting secret deals in back rooms. He's keeping members of his own political party in the dark, such that they have to apologize to people like me who have been willing to trust that what people say, that their word is their bond. Look, if somebody can't agree with me, I'd prefer they tell me outright. And then we can figure out where we can agree, if we can't agree in some areas. But to look you in the eye and tell you one thing and to do another is absolutely unforgivable. And now the majority leader is trying to abuse the rules of the Senate to pass a $700 billion partisan spending bill in the next week, in the next matter of days. A bill that was only announced in a press release yesterday. The Senate is not broken, Mr. President, but I'm afraid if this stunt pays off, Democrats are about to break it.